Thank you very much, Trevor, for joining us. Mississauga is one of the most vibrant cities in Canada and increasingly so. MBOT sits at the heart of a unique network of business across this wonderful city. Not only do they connect businesses at all levels, but they are also respected voice for businesses. So today we are lucky to have Trevor McPherson with us, who is the president and the CEO of Mississauga Board of Trade. He's been in this position for about a year, joined it with tons of experience and a track record of joining and helping people and connecting businesses. And uh, welcome to you, Trevor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Asif.
You are very welcome. So tell me, as a resident of Mississauga, I am proud of the city and I'm really excited to host this podcast with you and kick it off and see where it goes. So to start us, would you please tell us or our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you found your way to our little hamlet?
Well, it's really the little hamlet that could, obviously, because it's a little hamlet, perhaps actually probably 4 or 5 hamlets with lots of opportunity. But how did I find myself at the Board of Trade, at the Mississauga Board of Trade? I was for about 15 years with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was with the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, working in the International Trade Department, helping companies find partners and buyers in the U.S., but also in other foreign markets as well. So my time at the Ontario Chamber, I really grew an affinity towards chambers of commerce and boards of trade right across the country, in fact. And in my position of VP Member Services there, I was providing support along with the other members of the team at the Ontario Chamber to about 157 chambers of commerce and boards of trade across communities, right from volunteer-run chambers to more well-staffed organizations like Mississauga or like the Kitchener-Waterloo Regional Chamber of Commerce, Windsor, Essex, etc. So then my predecessor, David Wojciech, announced that he would be retiring. And it wasn't a position that I had sought, really, but I had a few discussions with folks who were asking whether this might be something that I would be interested in. And there's kind of a saying that you never understand a board of trade or a chamber of commerce until you've actually run one.
Mm.
So, and I really did think, and as you've alluded to, I really thought there was great opportunity for the city. It's diversity of not only people, but industrial makeup and sort of some of the big projects that are happening right now, from the Lakeview project to even within the life sciences sector, a new life sciences campus that's been announced at Sheridan Park. So I saw it as a great opportunity to continue on the great work done by my predecessor and the team, and keep advancing our cause as you say, as the voice of business. But more than that, we want to be a partner to business in helping our members with the various aspects of their business, whether that be with their current struggles, dealing with talent, and attracting and retaining talent. We're having a talent forum on November 30th to have that conversation, or whether it be providing business development opportunities either here in Mississauga or as we've hosted a number of international delegations in other foreign markets. So that's kind of what excites me about the job. And now having been here a year and kind of really a year of listening and observing, I have a keener sense, along with the fact that we just finished our strategic plan on where we can take the organization going forward. But really, it's not just about MBOT. It's about us leading, really championing the economy and seeing that we can be all that we can be during what is a continued uncertain time for business.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much. That's been a wonderful journey. And now, having been in the job for about 14 months, you're all set to take off. So tell our listeners a little bit about Mississauga Board of Trade, how you found it, and what you all do, and how you fit into the community here.
Sure. So yes, we have a very diverse membership. I'll start there. So our membership includes businesses, both large and small, and medium, I should say, and it also includes not-for-profit organizations. And we really saw that come together through the Mississauga Economic Recovery Group, where we have leading CEOs from across industry participating, and it was an initiative brought together in September 2020, sort of right in the throes of the early phases of COVID. But we quickly discovered that it was a great forum to sort of bring all of these various perspectives together at the leadership table and talk about how we can collectively move the local and regional economy forward. So that's one example. We also have a number of programs and services that cater to the various types of members that we have. So for our small and medium-sized members, they're very interested, of course, in networking and meeting potential business partners and buyers, et cetera. So we have, each month we have a Good Morning Mississauga where our members can sign up and pitch their company and opportunities to work with their organization. But we also have events that are, I wouldn't say more suited, but the larger firms gravitate to them, being our events with elected officials. So for example, we have a roundtable this week with the Honorable 𝐥𝐤𝐬, the Associate Minister of Transportation for the province. And then on November 10th, one of our local MPs and Minister of Transport, Omar Al-Ghabra, will be doing a luncheon with him. And so we really strive on providing the right value for the right type of member. And that's really sort of looking at our various member segments. The Talent Forum is one event and on November 30th that'll bring together various member cohorts, both the large companies and small, because it is an issue that hits everybody right now. But we do have particular activities that are probably better geared to either small or large. We also have a significant activity in document certification services. That's relatively unknown, but a fairly sizable part of our business as a not-for-profit is helping exporters with their export documents that need to be certified. So there's lots of opportunity to do more, I think, but you're going to see the growth, by and large, I think it'll come from on the advocacy side. And we have someone special to us, Brad Butt, who is our Vice President of Stakeholder and Government and Stakeholder Relations. He was successful in his bid to become a councillor for Ward 11. So we're actively seeking his successor there. But advocacy will be a very big part of how we move forward. But also, I think there's plenty of opportunity, and we've had some great discussions with the city and the Economic Development Office about how the Mississauga Board of Trade can play a stronger role in investment and trade, and being at the table. And we've already, referred our own members to Economic Development Office in Mississauga, members that are looking for space for expansion, which is a great problem to have. Maybe not so great if you're having real troubles finding it, but we think there's opportunity, and at a time right now when competition for talent and competition in general is so fierce that we all need to be working together as much as we can to ensure that we optimize sort of the potential of Mississauga. And I'm seeing it starting to happen a little bit more in the life sciences sector. There's still a ways to go if you look at the international competition out there, but we have many assets, including in Mississauga, with educational institutions, both public and private, doing phenomenal work. The Sheridan's Business School, the Hazel McCallion campus, UTM and all that they do in a number of areas, including life sciences, and then our members, Trias College and Metalworks, with their own partnerships with public institutions. So there's a lot to build on, and that's what kind of keeps me going.
That is great. And you mentioned a couple of things. One was about advocacy, and one was about business and education or university partnership, which has played a significant role in attracting relative industries to an area or a city. So in terms of advocacy, you mentioned, obviously, you do advocacy on part of city of Mississauga. But what I liked when you mentioned that you kind of pick up industries and make city conducive or attractive for them, you give the example of life sciences. So I think that is a very important part of your advocacy. So how do you go about it? Do you interact with industry organizations, or you kind of take the feedback from the
Sure.
members? How does that happen?
It takes many forms, but at the heart of sort of the Chamber of Commerce network in Canada or Ontario, at the provincial level, it's the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that's sort of the policy lead. At the federal level, it's the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. But they are most powerful when everybody is singing from the same song sheet. So each year we debate and we submit policy resolutions that the government of Ontario or the government of Canada should undertake this action or change or introduce legislation to do X, Y, or Z. When every chamber or a majority of chambers of commerce across the country are saying the same thing, or provincially, if cabinet members in the Ford government are hearing the same thing from each of the cabinet members because they've heard the same issue from their own local chamber of commerce, that really speaks volumes, and that's how we can influence. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily always a Mississauga Board of Trade thing, although it may originate at the Mississauga Board of Trade. We rely quite a bit on our colleagues across the chamber network in advancing issues, because we know that when it comes to those decisions around the cabinet table, or even before it gets to an elected politician's desk, it's developing those relationships with the senior levels of the bureaucracy. And the way I think about it sometimes is that while we are sort of one board of trade, I think of an initiative like our Mississauga Economic Resiliency Group, as we're calling it now. I think of Mississauga as a great place to pilot some initiatives in partnership, perhaps with the government, and say, hey, if it can work here, then it could scale out. Because, and the reason I say that is we're home to more multinational companies, I think, than really any jurisdiction around in Canada, and they have national and international mandates. And so what's the value proposition for them? Well, in addition to helping them through perhaps some local regulation and that sort of thing, it's the power of that collective, and in putting together some solutions, even if they're test bed type solutions, that they can get involved in and get behind at the local level in Mississauga. So yeah, that's a long, maybe convoluted way of explaining sort of that the advocacy role that we play. It's at all levels. It's at the municipal level with council, and we've got a new council being sworn in on November 15th. And it's also at the other two levels of government. And we thankfully are one of the larger chambers in the network, and thus we do get called upon for our input. We get called upon to testify before committees at Parliament in Ottawa, and similarly at committees at Queen's Park. So it's interesting, coming from my last job where most of my interaction would have been at the provincial or federal level, and now I'm just adding that local level flavor, I guess.
Yeah, no, that is, and I think my next question flows from that blend of local and regional experience that you bring to this job. What are some of the challenges that you see for businesses in Mississauga in particular but in Ontario in general?
Well, I think we are facing a number of challenges for business right now, that each of them without an overnight solution. So one is, of course, talent. Talent is coming through as the number one challenge for business right now. We're seeing a little bit of easing in some areas, and that's I think because what we're seeing happening in the economy and interest rates, etc. Supply chain is still an issue. That's why we're having a forum with Minister 𝐦𝐤𝐳 on the 10th of November. It's still an issue, and again, there was a task force that the minister put together in a report, but it's going to take some time. The other is, of course, affordability. So affordability for individuals, absolutely, but affordability for businesses. I was speaking with an owner who's in the food industry in Mississauga, and so one of the items he imports for his prepared food business is Italian tomatoes, which have doubled in price. That's not taking into consideration how packaging has also increased substantially in price, shipping, etc. So, and ultimately, the businesses can only absorb so much so far, that ultimately that does get passed down. So supply chain and inflation being significant issues for businesses right now, and that's whether you're doing really well or maybe not so well, because if you're doing really well, then your problem is you can't find the labor to deliver on the work you need to deliver on or grow. So it is difficult, but there is a role for the Board of Trade, and the best role, the most significant role a Chamber of Commerce or Board of Trade plays is being that trusted convener, where we can convene the parties together and help kind of bring everyone to the table. We don't come into these things, professing to be the expert or having all the answers, but I think that we have a pretty good reputation to be a trusted convener and a trusted platform to have those discussions.
That's amazing. You see, in the answer to my question a while ago, you mentioned something very important, how Mississauga has been successful in convincing so many multinationals and big companies to make the city their home. So I think that is enough testimony for the fact that our city officials, our leaders, mayor, MBOT have all done a really good job in doing the best they can with the growth that's been happening in the city and the change that it has brought. One other factor that I vouch for as a business person is that Mississauga is probably one of the biggest employment centers, not only business center, but employment center. So many people from adjoining cities find their employment and so they work in Mississauga. My next question would be, is there any kind of project that the MBOT is working on, and that is something big that you might want to talk to us about today?
Well, I did mention our talent forum at the end of November. That's one project, if you will, or event that we're working on in terms of being that convener to help to inform a dialogue about really best practices and what companies are doing to deal with this issue. Another is the Mississauga Economic Resiliency Group, which is, it's that CEO level group where we're engaging organizational leaders across the city, across sectors, in really contributing to our economic resilience through a time when competition has never been more fierce. And we're also helping to identify areas that we collectively, and oftentimes this involves, the actions of the two other levels of government, the province and the feds, to really look at how we can be most competitive. The life sciences sector is one that is certainly through COVID, the spotlight's been shone on it, and not only sort of the good pieces in terms of the knowledge workers and the standards that we have here, etc., but also some areas where if we want to really be a global competitive player in the space, we know that there are some areas that we need to shore up, and some of those are certainly longer term, with relating to electronic health records and that sort of thing. But it's really there are some key areas, and I think that we've almost taken some of these for granted in Mississauga. Sometimes I think we're a little bit defensive in terms of saying we're not Toronto, we have our own value here, and I think we just need to go out and do it, and really tout all that is happening. I know the mayor is doing that with the growth, and they're going to need the government alone can't do it by itself. They're going to need a fair amount of support, especially as that whole city center area develops. We have some great partners and members in the folks from Lakeview and Brightwater, and there's so much happening. One thing that is a concern right now, and we just came off a roundtable with the Associate Minister for Housing, is housing supply. And on the one hand, we're trying to get as many newcomers here to fill positions as possible. On the other hand, we're trying to catch up on the whole issue of housing supply. And then there's also the issue of employment lands, and there are only so many employment lands in Mississauga. So we have to be working both at the same time. And as I say, neither with an overnight solution, but yeah, lots of opportunity. And I don't think there's a lot of communities would be very envious of what we have here in Mississauga. The diversity of the community, all that's going on in relatively investment friendly climate. Although from a business perspective, we could always look for more there, because we're not competing with Hamilton and London. We're competing with Raleigh and Columbus and other jurisdictions and further afield as well in Europe and Asia. So lots of opportunity, but we just look to play our part in bringing the right people to the table, taking every opportunity that we can to share the narrative of what it's like as a business owner in Mississauga or in Ontario, for example, if we're speaking with the provincial government. And we were successful at doing that through COVID as programs were developed, and there were various hiccups, if you will, or things that needed to be improved. We'd like to continue to be able to play that role, as well as connecting our members for more business together, and connecting our members to knowledge. So we have a fairly robust professional development series that we run. So our members don't necessarily have to go out and hire various speakers or set workshop leaders themselves. They can come and participate in one of our workshops about whether it's for sales professionals or whether it's how to understand labor law and how it's changing. We'll always be there doing those types of activities too.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Basically, as you mentioned about the economic growth of Mississauga and in general, so one thing we can all vouch for and have experienced is that Mississauga's economic growth has conveniently outstripped that of its ecosystem and environments over the last many years, a couple of decades. What are some of the principal risks that you think can undermine that economic growth of the city?
Oh boy.
The reason I'm asking you, sorry, that's because you mentioned about the land supply, housing supply, and some of those constraints that you are now beginning to become cognizant of.
Yeah, I think, those are risks for sure, that we always need to ensure that we are being that we're competitive with it doesn't necessarily mean having the same incentives, but that we're competitive in the minds of essentially those firms looking at potential sites, and that's an economic development office activity in terms of their relationships with site selectors and all those sorts of things. the other risk really it goes back to talent and housing and affordability. Is that we're seeing some out migration to places where affordability is a little bit better. So that's a bit concerning. And the other would be ensuring that we're competitive tax wise. I think we are. The city held the line on taxes for business in the last budget, but it's going to get increasingly difficult, I think, to do that. And no, I think we've got a lot going for us. Where we need to ensure things move forward is quite frankly sometimes divisions between various levels of government, where sometimes it's harder to move forward on certain things that require investment of all three levels of government. Sometimes that can be an issue. But in terms of some of those risks, and then you're looking at some of the larger issues, energy costs, sustainability of our healthcare system, some of these issues that can pull down our competitiveness measure overall. But I think by and large, we've got the right people, we've got the smarts to make it happen, and we've got a great quality of life. So I think that these are overcome, but it's going to take everyone sort of working together. And I know that all levels of government are trying to balance these needs and also ensure that we don't sock our next generation into more debt. So and coming off of COVID, where considerable spending happened at all levels of government, and necessarily so, it's going to be important to make sure that we're really prudent on our fiscal approach. And I look forward to hearing Minister Bethlen Falvey's fall economic statement, which I believe is on November 14th.
Okay, that'll be great. So you just mentioned about diversity also, and we all know that Mississauga has been a hotbed of diversity and inclusion, and it has done a wonderful job in that respect. Will you highlight, for the benefit of our viewers, some of the efforts that MBOT has made around diversity and inclusion?
Sure, and as I say, it's just been a year for me, but I've really enjoyed getting to know some of the more influential groups. Now, part of it is through the international work that we do, and we like to host a number of international delegations, which oftentimes bring to the table business owners in Mississauga that are from a particular community, culture, for example. The other area is the Mayor Crombie just received a report from her Black Caucus. So we've developed a good relationship with the Black Caucus, and just to understand what more we can do there, what more we can do with First Nations as well, and Indigenous people overall. I was glad to attend a wonderful event at the Paramount Center on National Truth and Reconciliation Day, or just before. And I think I'm not going to profess to you that we're doing everything and there's nothing else we can do, because there's always something that we can do in this area. But I think it makes so much sense that we leverage as best we can what is really a community asset in the diversity that we have, the relationships that go internationally, back to home markets, etc. So I think there's more that we can do, and I'd like to do eventually a little bit more in the area of trade. We just signed an MOU with the Canada Arab Business Council to do more business-related activity in the Middle East, North Africa region. We continue to host a number of delegations as well. We'd like to ensure that we stay strategic on that as well. But in terms of activity, it's really ensuring that our board, as we go through nominations process, that there's adequate representation there. All of the the things that every business should be doing to ensure that if we don't represent the business community when someone looks at MBOT, and if they don't see themselves reflected, then we've got work to do. That's all I would say.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And the work that has already been done has been amazing. I sometimes not only take pride in Mississauga, but I like to describe it as a model of a city where every creed, color, and culture is thriving. And that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Trevor, is there a single piece of advice, wisdom that has resonated with you throughout your career?
Throughout my career, you know what? I tend to go back to basics, and it really is. It's about communication. It's about listening, and I think being a good listener is always good advice. And to as much as we can, be as genuine as we can. I gravitate to people that it's hard to describe, but you can feel a genuine.
Yeah, people who are authentic.
Yeah, that really, they don't put themselves above anyone. They want to just genuinely contribute. And those are the kinds of people that we, and I think MBOT like working with.
Yes.
But overall, listening and understanding is probably the biggest piece of advice. If you can communicate well, and be a good listener, you're going to be okay in terms of your business or what have you. But if you try to steamroll through, you're not going to do too well.
Get that far. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that is a wonderful piece of advice. And Trevor, what's your biggest inspiration?
Ooh, that's a good question. My biggest inspiration. You know what? Let's go a little personal here, and not I'm not going to name a family member, although my parents are both have been inspirational to me. But something that inspires me outside of work is music, to tell you the truth, and really all forms of music. I really like the creative process. I've been fortunate to host some singer-songwriters at my home, just because I enjoy it so much. So that's something that inspires me, to tell you the truth. And I think that through COVID, the arts and the creative community is something that everyone sort of recognized how much it meant to them. And when we couldn't go out and see a play, or we couldn't go out and see a concert, I think that people realize how important that is, even for all of our mental health. So I would put music right up there.
Is there a particular type of music that you enjoy more?
Well, it's all across the board, really. I mean, singer-songwriter type music is what I normally gravitate to, but I like Stan Getz jazz just as much. So.
Right. Thank you very much, Trevor. Your time for talking to us, and we are indebted to you for accepting our invitation to be the keynote speaker at our annual conference on November 12th, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you, Asif.